times the surface energy. Or that means you can more think about surface tension. Think about water. When you have water, water has a very high surface tension, right? 72.7 millimeters per liter. So when you have a water, actually, if you have a drop of that, well, a drop of water, they always tend to form those kind of spherical shape. The reason for that is because they want to reduce the overall energy, right? So by that way, the overall free energy of the droplet can be reduced. So they try to generate a configuration that has the smallest surface energy. Okay, so therefore, the surface energy term will try to prevent the formation of the new nuclei, right? So, okay, then when we consider these two terms, this one is a surface energy term, free energy term. You know that when free energy is above 0, that means it's a non-spontaneous process. When it's below 0, then that means it can be, kind of like from energetic consideration, it's preferred. So when you consider the surface energy term, as I mentioned, it's always above 0. So that means it's prevent the formation of the new nuclei. But the cooling process, you know that when you cool from a solid liquid to a solid, they always release heat. Okay, so therefore this is always a negative term. This is always try to generate the nuclei, right? When you combine these two, and when the nuclei size is very tiny, the surface energy penalty is high. Okay, if you consider the slope of these two curves, okay, this one is helping, this one is retarding. At the beginning, when the size is small, the overall free energy is positive, and also if you consider the slope is sharp. Only at a certain point, okay, at this point, the contribution from these terms actually neutralize, and then the slope becomes 0. We call that point, or we call the corresponding size of the nuclei, we call that the critical size. Okay, so that means when the size of the nuclei above that one is going downhill, so that means it becomes more and more stable when the crystal getting larger and larger. Okay, so these are the kind of like from the very simple energetic consideration, from the latent heat of fusion, and with the generation of new surfaces. Okay, the penalty from that one. So therefore, when we consider the overall free energy change, we need to combine those two, and then we can define a critical size, which is related to the surface energy term as well as the delta GV. That means the unit volume, the free energy change because of the latent heat, right? So from here you can see that if you have a system, surface energy term or those kind of a surface tension term is very large. That means you need a larger critical size, right? When the critical size becomes large, to be very large, they can continue to grow. Otherwise, if we have the latent heat terms, actually that one is very small, that means we also need a large critical size. Right? So that means the delta GV is small means what? Means the pushing force that toward this kind of downhill part is not significant compared to the retardant part. Right? So that's I asked a question here first.
Why is it negative? Why is R star negative?
Take a look here. Take a look from so they think about that one. This term, when it's below 0, it's less than 0, right? Or right? Or actually, it's equal to 0. Okay. So then you remove this term to the other side. You calculate the R star because here's RQ, here's R2. You can get 1 R. Rearrange that one, you will get that one. Because when you move this term to the right side, you need to change the term to negative. Right? Yes.
So would you say if you're finding the formation of crystal inside of a solvent to precipitate, do you still have the free energy of a free surface, or would it be the interfacial tension?
It's is actually, when I talk about the gamma here, is the surface energy between the liquid and the solid. You think about it's a solid phase. Okay, so that one is very difficult to measure, to tell you the truth. Okay, so especially when it's very small, it's a semi-solid, semi-liquid. Okay, so but we define that as a solid liquid interface energy. Okay, okay, so indeed, based on what we know now, we know that we can actually control the critical radius by doing some way with the undercooling. Okay, so undercooling plays a very important role here. Undercooling, we define the undercooling, as a chemical engineer, you should know about that, right? It's a delta T. So that means how much temperature, the cooling down temperature below the PM, or the melting temperature of the metal, right? So that's how much of the undercool is. That defines the delta T term. Delta HF term, this is the fusion latent heat for a certain metal at a certain temperature. This is a fixed number. Surface tension term, Tm, melting temperature. So based on here, you can see that if the delta T, or the undercool rate, is small, when delta T is a small number, you need a large R star, right? Or that means if the undercool temperature, or the undercooling is huge, it's a big number. So that means, see for example, if the melting temperature is 1,000 degrees, if now we're quickly cooling down that to the room temperature. Okay, that means the delta T is about 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's really a big number, okay? So usually in that case, when the delta T is large, that means you do not need a very large critical size. So that means a very tiny one could initiate those kind of continuous growth, yes.
If you had a low undercooling temperature, but you had a high flux because you were stirring it or something?
That will also affect, yes. How do you process if you have a stirring, or sometimes you do not do anything, that will also, I'm going to cover that one, yes.
So this looks like a thermodynamic argument for the stability, but how does it take into account the kinetics of the heat transfer?
That's a good question. I'm also going to cover that one. Okay, I'm very soon I'm going to cover that one. So the cooling rate, or the heat transfer rate, really affects the crystal structure, what you will get. Okay, you could get very tiny one, or you could get very thin and a very long one. Okay, I'm going to cover that one very soon. Okay, now we talk about the heterogeneous. After we talk about the homogeneous, means we only consider the metal itself. Okay, so all the metals or the nuclei are actually coming from the metal atoms. But in many cases, in the reality, the most important nucleation process is not the homogeneous, but the heterogeneous. Heterogeneous, the reason for that was very easy to understand, because there are always impurities, or there's always some kind of see for example, when you pour the melting metals into a container, when you want to mold a special parts, you always have those kind of interface, right? Or the inner walls of your container. Those will function as surfaces for initiate the heterogeneous nucleation. Okay, so therefore the heterogeneous nucleation will occur on the surfaces. See, for example, impurities, or on the inner walls of your container. So for those, the reason, or we call these structures nucleating agents. The reason why they can, they help the nucleation is because, they can very efficiently reduce the surface energy penalty. Okay, think about that one. If you have a metal, okay, these green ones actually the solidified part. Here's a melting metal. If the melting metal can wet your nucleation, those kind of nucleating agent. So after they solidify, they will form this kind of a droplet shape. But don't forget, the contact angle will be much, much smaller than the ones with a spherical. Think about that, right? This is more like a spherical cap compared to a droplet of those metal liquid. Right? So therefore, just from the energetic consideration, this kind of a small contact angle will greatly help you to reduce the surface energy penalty there. Don't forget, the thing that really prevents the formation of the nuclei is the energy term related to the generation of the new surfaces, right? But now, because there is some pre-existing, surfaces there already, so they will help. But one thing you need to remember is the melts need to wet the surface. If they do not wet, you still could form, the melting metal still could form, still require this kind of spherical shape. So therefore, for those kind of non-wetting case, it's very different. Okay? So, and also for the heterogeneous reaction occur, so the nucleation agent term, actually from here you can see when the gamma becomes smaller, R star, the critical size, will also get reduced. Right? So that means you do not need the nuclei to grow to a very big size. They can continue to grow. Right? So that's easy to understand. And also you do not need a very large undercooling to initiate this, the continued growth of the crystal. And also heterogeneous reaction, as I mentioned, is much more commonly occurred in the real industrial process. Okay, so and also as I mentioned, the crystal, once you have those kind of a nucleation or the nuclei, then the surrounding liquids will continue to grow on them, and they will become larger and larger until all the atoms, the liquid atoms, being combined to a final crystal. But we call those kind of crystals have different grains, where each grain has their own specific crystal planes. We call this the polycrystalline crystal, and also we call those kind of boundaries between different grains. We call them grain boundaries, right? Grain boundary means grain boundary is a very important type of defects. Next class, when we talk about the crystal imperfections, don't forget this kind of grain boundaries is one very important type of defects. Okay, so to answer the previous question, kinetics or the heat transfer during the cooling really also plays a very important role. Okay, not only the thermodynamics but also the kinetics. Say for example, when you try to cool a metal melt inside a mold. Okay, that mold could be a clay mold or could be another metal mold. Okay, but don't forget, usually when you try to pour the melting metal into the mold, usually the mold is at room temperature or at a temperature much smaller than the melting temperature of the metal, right? So that means the undercool could be big, because that one is 25 degrees. Usually metal, you need to melt them to like 1500 degrees Celsius or even above that, depending on the melting temperature of the metal, right? So think about that process. When you pour the melting metal into a mold that at room temperature, at the boundary that's very close to the mold, for those, undercool rate is highest, right? So therefore, when we consider the heat transfer process as well as the thermodynamics, what you will get for those kind of boundary layers, you will get, we call that acid grains. So usually these grains are tiny. Why they are tiny? What does that tell us? Yeah, it forms quickly, and also how about the number of the initial nuclei? Large or small? Small number or large number? Must be very large number, right? So that's easy to understand. So that means because there's a large undercooling there. So at the beginning, they will help to generate a lot of seeds at the beginning, and each seed will grow until they grow to a small size. These kind of fine grains. But in the center part, okay, also think about that. Here at the very, very center, if you consider the heat transfer, okay, the heat need to be transferred from the center to the outside, okay? then there's a gradient there, right? So if you think about the gradient, which one is the highest? Okay. It's kind of like, oh yeah, here is big, but also there's some kind of a gradient build up inside the inside, not the boundary layer, right? For those, because of the heat transfer, what you will get, and also usually the direction of the heat transfer is perpendicular to the inner wall. So you will get these kind of very long and very thin, coarse-grained domains. Okay, the reason for that is because in those, during the nucleation process, you do not have that many nuclei as the boundary layer. So each of that will grow, but they will grow to a larger group. Okay, so that means this is related to the kinetics of the. So we call those kind of the columnar grains. So they are large grain, and because they have a very limited nuclei at the beginning. And also, if we think about the real industry process for making like metal, different shapes, we usually using the casting technology, right? So that means you have a metal, a melting metal, and then you pour them into specific mold, and then use some water to cooling down. And see, for example, this one shows aluminum cooling process, and the water flows and then cool down the process. And then you have another control actually that molds down with the end of the aluminum foil. So by that way you could get like a big rows of those kind of rectangular shape aluminum foils. You might see some movies about the continuous casting of stainless steel, right? To make ingots of that. Could be very thin, could be like a different thickness. So by that way, using this kind of initial material, that we can use some different processes. The different processes, I'm going to talk about that for next class in the chapter 5. So using different processes that we can make, say for example, metal shells for the car and other shapes, right? So that's and also as later on, when we talk about the mechanical property of the metals, okay? So here shows two different, samples made out of aluminum. Okay, one is this kind of you see it's a rounded shape. You see those kind of columnar structures. So, but this one is more what? It's more grain, right? So that means there are small grain. Okay, so for for the real application, for the typical application, say for example, if you want to use aluminum for the cars, for making the outer shells of the cars, which one you might think to use? The large grain one or the small grain one, the fine grain one? What is it? We will talk about that in chapter 6.
The
This
smaller?
one, right? The fine grain one. There's a reason for that. Because this one, usually you have the metal has a better mechanical strength. Okay, so there's a reason for that. We are going to talk about that. Also related to the critical size. Okay, but anyhow, if you want to get these kind of small grain, fine grain metals, what you can do very easy based on what we learned in the nucleation, you just add something there, right? So that means you increase the number of the initial nuclei. And then they will help, each of that will grow to a small crystal. So when you have a lot of those nuclei, then you can have this kind of a final fine grains, right? So this one actually, so we call those, to generate those kind of fine grain size, we really can add some grain refiners. They could be, like for the aluminum, they could be aluminum alloy, could be aluminum themselves, but a very fine size aluminum particles, or it could be some other metals like titanium, boron, or could be zirconium. So you could control the final structure and also control their properties. Yeah.
Which one's glass? Is glass A because it just shatters?
Which one is less?
Glass.
You mean no? All these are aluminum.
No, I'm saying like
The glassy state.
yeah, like
This one is more toward the glassy state.
glass. Oh.
Yeah, glassy means less ordinary. Okay, glassy state means less ordinary. But this one is still